democracy, and above all, humanity. The changing dynamics of the economy and growth in infrastructural development have necessitated industry and academia to develop close links with the aim of creating a synergistic system which will result in an employable and skilled workforce. The long-awaited National Education Policy 2020 was announced by the Union Cabinet on July 29, 2020, focusing on key reforms in both social and higher education system that will prepare the next generation to thrive and compete in the new digital age. The last education policy was announced by our Prime Minister, erstwhile Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in 1986, focusing on adult education and empowerment of minorities. While early childhood to semi-adult stage, K-12 segment is the founding pillar of holistic child development. Higher education system equips a student for a professional life. With the increasing need for creative, multidisciplinary, and highly skilled workforce for employment, Indian higher education system needs to be readjusted and revamped to meet the emerging requirements. The main focus of the NEP is not only on improving the quality of education, but also on formulating an effective regulatory regime for higher education institutions across India. It is a very significant day for all of us, as today's seminar is another effort by IEI to raise awareness amongst academia and industries about the salient features of NEP and formulating an implementation strategy and a way forward. We have the privilege of having amongst us eminent speakers, Dr. R.K. Shivgaonkar, Professor Emeritus, IIT Bombay and ex-director IIT Delhi, Dr. D.P. Agarwal, former chairman, Union Public Service Commission, and Dr. Alok Nath Dey, member ETDB II, consulting director and corporate vice president of League, chief technology officer, Samsung R&D Institute, Bangalore, who will enlighten us on this topic. Now I would request Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi, Chairman, Emerging Technology Task Force, the moderator of today's event, to take over. But first, I would like to give a brief introduction to Mr. Chaturvedi. Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi, FIE, an automobile engineering graduate, was a council member of the Institution of Engineers, India, and Chairman, Emerging Technology Task Force. He was Chairman, Delhi State Center in 2001 to 2, and Chairman of Strategic Plan Committee, Mechanical Engineering Division Board, Research and Development Committee, and member of various other committees. As Chairman ICC IEI, he planned and edited the IEI centenary volume on Future of Engineering, released at the Engineering Congress in December 2020. This has included contribution of national and international engineering personalities, and the book is internationally appreciated. He was also the founder chairman of Safety and Quality Forum and laid foundation of safety culture in engineering profession. He is deeply involved with engineering professional development, leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, and digitalization program, as he is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineering and several other national and international engineering professional organizations. He has been associated with programs of IEI since 1983 World Energy Congress. Now may I request Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi to kindly take over from me from this point. Thank you.
Thank you, General Siali. President Sir, with your permission, shall I request Dr. D.P. Agarwal to speak, because we can listen to him for more time before he catches the flight.
Please, please.
Dr. D.P. Agarwal has been briefly introduced. He's so well known. He was also the director of the Indian Institute of Information Technology and Management, being responsible for the conceptualization, design, and construction of the institute campus from ground zero. He was also advisor education in the Government of India, and he is one of the thinkers in the engineering education field. We have been working under his guidance for quite some time. Now let us request, and my grateful thanks to Shivgaonkar ji and Professor Dey for agreeing to readjust the program, looking into Dr. Agarwal's convenience. So Dr. Agarwal Sahab, thank you very much for your making it convenient to be with us. Kindly make your presentation, sir.
Thank you very much. Indeed, such a great pleasure and honor that I've been invited to speak on a topic which is occupying everybody's mind. I must also thank my co-panelist speakers who have adjusted with the time. Since I had to catch a flight, therefore I requested, and thank you very much, sir. At the outset, let me say, Institute of Engineers has been very kind to me all the time, being its fellow and all that opportunity which I have. So during my discussion, I've been talking about whether in the new change order, after the new education policy, should the professional bodies and particularly institution of engineers, what roles possibly for them to play in the next 4 to 5 years. I like to look at the curriculum side of the NEP 2020, and I'm sure my friends will look at some other aspects. I'll also try to give at the end of my talk a slide where I think the FI, the institution of engineers would take a call to deliver a few things. Now, about NEP, many things have already been said. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, please
Okay.
go ahead.
It is one of the most debated policy in the government. There has been policy in each of the area of the government and the industry. But this particular policy has been debated very, very extensively. Sometimes it's so difficult to find out what extra new things to be said. And each of them has come to say a point that after all, why this national policy in education was brought in. We remember that we were at a position where we were about to take a jump towards the development of economy of this country and ensuring the quality of life for people. And what is that role education plays in it is probably what NEP 2020 focuses to. And I remind you that the Honorable Prime Minister, when the policy was announced, said that each country has a freedom to educate its people, keeping in mind its own needs. Now, this has been generally a myth that we must follow what the other countries do. But the Prime Minister very nicely points out that the people of a given nation would be educated to ensure that the country develops. And I try to, in that line, I try to understand that technical education being a professional education, what are the goals are before it as the country embarks on to from a developed nation to a developed nation, with economy is almost in parity being number 3, and there are a lot of development taking place. So let's look at some of the parameters which are emerging, which NEP 2020 is going to address. First, is crucial that the technical education is a vehicle through which countries are developed. So the role of technical education in development of the nation is already established. In fact, the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, when he visited IIT Kharagpur, said that it is the science and technology and the portals of institutions like IITs that the nation's future would be built. It has become almost a dream come true that we have contributed in almost all sectors. But the challenge today, because of the change of technology, because the change, the industry works from 4.0 to in future 5.0, you require manpower which is different, and you require them to be very qualified almost in the present sector. And therefore, one of the area where the NEP talks about creating manpower which can be utilized to occupy a crucial position in the world industrial scenario. The second point, which is one should appreciate, that technology has changed, and the change in technology has been so rapid that while in the earlier time it used to be 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, it has been the change in 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. And you can imagine when the change in technology occurs, impact on education, curriculum, the services and the product will be visible. And therefore, it is important that the manpower which we are training are not unidirectional, not single dimension, but they are multi-skill, knowledgeable manpower, ready to accept everything. We are also aware that in last 5, 7, 8 years, we embarked on a number of initiatives, in some of to which the technical education would contribute, and which also find a space in the new education policy, that how to make in India a success, how to make digital India as a reality and a dream, how to convert job seekers into job providers with Startup India opportunities, and above all, creating in India called Atmanirbhar Bharat. And this is only possible when we are relying on lots of innovation and lots of new thinking and lots of research. On one hand, there is a challenge that we educate people into frontline research areas which can occupy the global needs. But you must also appreciate that the country's growth only occurs through its industrial activity. It's activity which transforms the knowledge into the economy of the country, and therefore industry occupies a great role in the development of this nation. And therefore a closer interaction has been sought out under NEP between industry and higher educational institutions. And it is thought that it is the industry and the workplace and the research setups that would drive innovation and research, and new products would develop. So the contours are emerging, where we are thinking of critical thinking people, we are thinking people who can think out of box, we are trying to understand what are they going to be new product choices, and we are looking at the customer satisfaction. It's also been understood that when this policy was not there, India has shown its mettle that in certain areas of technology, we have already made a name. And this technology has been called the information technology. Its various forms have been utilized, and India's readiness in India's giving direction is well known. Keeping that in mind, it is understood in the new education policy that India is going to play a futuristic role in preparing professionals who can handle the emerging technologies which are acting as a disruptive technologies and which are going to support India to become a top nation with Industry 5.0 in place. Not only that, we have done productivity and manufacturing areas, but integration of the emerging technology into health, environment, and sustainability is another goal which has laid out in the new policy. With this in mind, let us understand what the education would do. And therefore, to satisfy all that, the aim of technical education and education per se should be to create holistic and well-rounded people which are equipped with 21st century skills. Now, these skills, one would say, how does the century means to change of skills? It talks about it's because as the technology changes, its impact on society, its impacts on development, its impact of satisfying people, improving the poverty line, creating sustainable world is what the 21st century needs are. And who are going to do them? It is going to be done by creating new knowledge. Every day new knowledge to be created. Things were done in past in one way, can be done again another way, keeping an efficiency and productivity in mind. And therefore, quality higher education would aim to develop very thoughtful, well-rounded, which I call holistic, and creative persons. These people who are able to adapt and adopt any technology and can adapt to any situation which the country required. The question also comes up that what is that so important emerging in the 21st century? There are two things happening. One, that we must be very clear and knowledgeable about the emerging technologies. We must be sure that whatever the new technology are going to come, how quickly we can adapt to this. But then to make use of these technologies and get benefit of science, we must not only create a scientific temper among our people, but utilize the knowledge and power of science technology in developing the country's economy. But when you do that, let's not forget that we must have a humanistic view of the personality. So there are three things which has evolved. One, which the new policy addresses. Number one, that you must be very good in the subject areas in which you want to specialize. But at the same time, you must have a well-rounded personality in which you are very good in soft skills. And thirdly, that you have society connect. And for that society connect, you have to expose to learning of arts and humanities, you are exposed to learning of languages, you are exposed to learning of vocations, you are exposed to learning what society needs. So this exposure becomes threefold. NEP therefore addresses not only one-dimensional education, but subject expertise, holistic personality development in making you a person with a humanistic approach in solving the people of the country. Now, if I could do that, new education policy points out only 3 in 4 possibilities. It talks about that only an appropriate curriculum would address the kind of issues we have talked about. Most of the time, we keep on saying that our curriculum does not match what industry needs. Our curriculum does not meet what the futuristic demands of the country. And therefore, new education policy lays out a lot of emphasis on a new curriculum which is relevant and which is updated almost every day as the new technology emerges, as the new knowledge comes in. And at the same time, this curriculum is designed in such a manner that it is not rigid, but it is flexible to satiate the demands and needs of a learner. So far, we said if somebody wants to become a mechanical engineer, he would do these courses. But since the bouquet is now 3 compartment, 60%, 20%, 20%, there would be a lot of flexibility and it would rely the choice of the learner, which is critical. But once you design curriculum, is that good enough? More than that, what is required, that who is going to deliver this curriculum to a student? And therefore, there is a focus on pedagogical practices, which is listed in the new education policy. If I understood the pedagogy clearly, pedagogy is nothing but a relationship between the provider and the learner in a manner in which both understand each other, and the objective is to learn the concepts, the fundamentals, the practices, then use them to solve the problems. And therefore, all kinds of possibilities would be explored. Learning outcomes would be written, the supportive engagements have to be created, we have to create what is called as a learning from learners and things like that. So all kinds of bouquet, at least 7, 8, 9, 10 possibilities are done. But I like to focus, and I thought one of my other experts may also like to comment on. In this country, if something is missing very badly, is the right assessment of a candidate. And I think new education policy talks about in large volumes about what should be the assessment procedure. IITs on one end do a kind of assessment, and thousands of other universities do another kind of assessment. And what new education policy talks about, that whatever good curriculum you have, whatever good pedagogy you used, unless you assess them properly, you assess the subject knowledge, you assess the problem-solving attitude, you assess the leadership quality, you assess the ethical standards, you assess on a continuous basis of each learning what student do. What new education policies bring out, that it is not only important that you create a good quality learning in the class, but new education policy talks about create a holistic environment in which a student could learn beyond the class through clubs, eco clubs, culture clubs, sports, NSS, NCC, and blah, blah, blah. And through that, how do I account that learning into my grade cards is very crucial. And therefore, NEP vision is simple. It talks about that the future universities would be large, multidisciplinary, with in the government committing that they would create one such in each of the district. So I'm expecting that another 400, 600 such institutions would emerge. And objective is that by 2035, 2040, GR reaches 50, which is currently 26. And NEP talks about a number of strategies. And in this slide, the last is addressed towards 50% of this. I've already spoken about rethinking curriculum, rethinking pedagogy, rethinking assessment, which is the core. Now, to deliver this, what NEP says that if I have to do a flexi education, if I have to have a curriculum which is challenging, there must be a lot of autonomy and freedom to the institutions. And therefore, it says there should be enormous freedom with the student. Sorry, while freedom given to students, there must be enormous choices with the faculty in the institution to experiment, to plan, to adapt, depending on the needs which are required. And therefore, opportunities must be given in autonomous manner. In what the policy says, that at the end of 2045, all institutions would become degree giving, and therefore all that what is required autonomy, both academic and the other administrative autonomy will be given to the institution. And the advantage therefore
Yes, sir.
that we have to nurture the teachers, we have to nurture the governance.
No, I'm just going to do that. Let him finish because he has to catch a. He's from the airport. He's speaking from the airport.
Yeah, I'll just. Okay.
Bilkul.
Then governance of HEI is being said. It says it will be light and bigger. So let's quickly. University, I've already said. I'm only trying to say here, there are going to be three kinds of institutions: university doing research, university doing teaching and research, and there would be colleges which are autonomous, mainly focusing on undergraduate education. Holistic development, I did touch, and I said the new education policy talks about that we would specialize in one area. Up to 50% of the credit required would be devoted to that. Remaining 50% credit divided to flexibility, where holistic personality development would be key focus, covering skills related to soft skills, the values, and the constitutional requirement. Enhancing skills, which are essential skill thinking, is important. Now, so far, the space of curriculum has been very crowded. There has been no flexibility. And what now we are seeing that total education must think of challenging people to think new, creating a critical thinking, creating inquiry and discovery, create more discussion in the class, and create more analysis. Content should clarify concepts, ideas, application, problem solving. Teaching learning will have to be more interactive. Questions from learners are encouraged. Many times I go to universities and I find students don't ask questions. How do I create that fun among students to ask more questions? Experiential learning is the future, and in my last slide, I'm going to touch that. Empowering students through course choices. Now, what has been said in NEP, that in addition to your subjects, the remaining 40% or 50% of credit should allow you to take vocational subjects, should allow you to take art subjects, should allow you to take craft subjects. You should be judged with co-curricular, extracurricular activities, and in planning curriculum, scope must be left in which this flexibility comes. Language has been touched very interestingly on two aspects. One, it has been found out through cognitive learning that learning occurs the best when learner is being educated in a language in which he is comfortable. So the focus is on understand the student's choice and make him learn. It may not be teaching in that particular area, but you can make him learn into the way he understands things. So that's a focus which has brought. And it's also said that it is important to learn more than one language so that it makes you a global citizen. And when you learn better, you become a good storyteller and you can express yourself better and communicate better. Capacity building is a must. If they choose their individual curriculum, most of us understand we require a great quality of mentorship because students per se are not aware of what is going to be future. Therefore, a mentorship would be needed. And who's going to give to that? I think we are going to see. The focus is on create a global citizen, imbibe with skills, imbibe with quality of life, and creating leaderships. Social connect is a must. Now, two last points I like to make. One, so far in our country, whether you are a good student or a bad student, we have not been differentiated. Yes, we do get ranks, we get awards, but enrichment to these students is a must. In each class, my own study indicates that 10 to 20% in normal institution, 30 to 50% in institutions like IITs are students which are gifted, which are talented. We have to inculcate and support these gifted and talented people to achieve something beyond the curriculum needs, beyond the degree requirement, and try to exploit, try to encourage them to exploit their potential and talent to create something new, either a new product or a new knowledge or new opportunities in new thinking. So this is one area which I thought is a great challenge, and I seek this. I'll skip this. But what I'm more interested is now this is one slide which has been confusing people out. Today is not the time I talk about this. But my difficulty is that while there is nothing available to people who are very talented, equally there is nothing available to people who are poor. I always believed that once you are taking a student, it is very rare that your teaching methodology, your curriculum has to be such flexible that they must be able to show potential. We have in a habit of failing students. We have in a habit of giving fail grades. I see a future where you can take work out of a candidate and judge him in such a manner that his potential has come out. And that is probably one area which in the curriculum needs going to be there. I would conclude by my last slide. What is going to be the role of institutional engineers in the NEP implementation? My thesis is that members of all kinds of Institute of Engineers are a storehouse of knowledge and experience. That's my presumption, and I think I'm right more than 100% on it. You pick up a person, experience of 30 years, 35 years of industry, government, workplace, entrepreneurship, all that is available. It is true that many of them utilized in curriculum design processes, but they have been more of a lip service. I put forward a proposal that Institute of Engineers in their forums discuss, and they can evolve a curriculum framework which consists of the knowledge, the holistic personality, and the third component, which I said, learning from anywhere in that component. Now, once we are able to do that, there would be regulatory bodies, and we can write to regulatory bodies because our connect is with each of the profession, our connect with each of industry. We should therefore give what is called as a model curriculum given IEE, submit to the regulator, which so far we have not done. And that's one of my proposals. Number two is that this new education policy would only work successfully when we have quality mentors who can guide the student to choose their flexible path. Also to allow the bright student to succeed, as well as to people who are not as bright to complete the curriculum and learning in a more fun-oriented manner. And therefore, I propose that most of the mentors must share life experiences. Now, the problem with learning is that on one hand, you learn in the university and they say it is not used. Can you think, based on your experience, how the learning should change so that your experience would enable a student to learn within the system? What has been said greatly, students would require internship, hand-holding, teachers would require training. We all are very good in continuing education programs. Therefore, create a bouquet of continuing education programs. Being IE in connect to most of the industry, create a pool of internship. Also create a pool of large amount of projects which student can undertake in different industry with your mentorship. The other point I'd like to suggest that since many of our entrepreneurship, many of you have done new products in new processes, could we enable institutions to create IPR and through this IPR create new product and create win-win position both for industry as well as the institutions. I mentioned our CEP, and then my last point of the model would be that is it possible that 5 or 7 regional units of institute of engineers can hold hand with 4 or 5 universities and institutions and try to do what I listed above. And based on the success of these models, they can become a prototype in future. My friends, today I'm a little in a hurry because I have to catch my flight. I thank you for this opportunity. I have rushed my things. I'll submit my slides to souvenirs. The point I like to make, curriculum can be designed. But institutional engineers, I want them to think curriculum and design. Let them give these 2 regulatory bodies. Create and open your opportunity and say, we are holding your hand. Let this message go to the government that these are the 5 areas in which Institute of Engineers would definitely do. Thank you very much, friends.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal, for your kind presentation. I know you're sitting at the airport, you're in a hurry to check in, but before I'll request you to spare for a few minutes, I'll request our president to address when you are still here. So, Mr. Thackeray, our president, may I request you to kindly address.
Thank you, Chaturvedi ji. Dr. G. Ranganathan, Chairman CATE, eminent panelist of the session, Professor Agarwal ji, former Chairman UPSC, Dr. R.K. Shavgaonkar, Professor Emeritus IIT Bombay and ex-director IIT Delhi, Dr. Alapnath Dey, member of Electronics and Telecommunication Division Board of IEA and from Samsung India, council members, Engineer P. Chaturvedi, moderator of the session, Secretary and Director General ji. A very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I am thankful to Professor Agarwal for his presentation and highlighting IEA's role in implementation of NEP 2020. I consider it a great opportunity for all of us to be a part of this technical webinar on national education policy being organized today by our IEA to discuss and highlight various features of NEP 2020. The National Education Policy was announced on 29th of July 2020, replacing the National Education Policy which came into force in the year 1986. This is perhaps one of the greatest reforms initiated by the government in the Indian education industry. Equity and inclusion is the central idea of the policy to address the problem of inequity and exclusion in Indian education system. Framing a national education policy for a country like India, having extensive socio-economic and cultural diversity, is really a Herculean task. Addressing the problems for delivering quality education to the marginalized group is one of the most important components of NEP 2020. In order to meet the requirements of the diverse population, the NEP has incorporated flexibility in the system and taken a multidisciplinary approach. The deliberation on these issues are expected to provide us more insight and leave us intrigued. I hope that discussions during the webinar will encompass all facets of the subject involving stakeholders. I will request the remaining panelists to also guide us about the IA's probable role in implementation of NEP 2020. We are eager to hear from the experts on this emerging topic, and I hope everybody will get enlightened by this presentation. I wish this webinar all success. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shah, for your kind address. I'll just like to mention two important things before Dr. Agrawal leaves. First is the chairman of Delhi State Center, who is now become the Vice Chancellor of Rajasthan Technical University, has asked me that I can suggest to the panel, if so desired, that we can in Delhi, we can hold a conference following out of the suggestion that emerged out of this webinar and discuss on the issues. And he said he would make all arrangements and also bring in that knowledge of what technical universities can work closely with the institution of engineers, and then IIA can play an important role. And the second point that I just wanted to mention was that you would have read in the newspaper that the G20 officials are meeting in Udaipur from 4th to 7th to set the agenda. Now, we had a discussion with some of those members that they have set up B20 as a business group and E20 as the engineering group, that some of the meetings out of the 200 that the government has planned should be combined meetings between business and engineering, and institutions should play an important role. And I'm told that even in some of the discussion between yesterday and today, this has been mentioned. Now we will see the institution playing an important role even in G20. So I thought these two information I must pass on before you.
I think two very wonderful suggestions are from you.
Yeah.
And I thought I see a lot of future for IE.
Yeah.
We must very carefully and quickly have to
Yes.
do it.
Yeah.
I think we must, and I think all of us will support.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I shall take leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Dr. Agrawal,
Thank
you
you.
can stop sharing.
Ah,
Okay.
ah,
Okay. I'll
Thank you,
stop.
Agrawal, sir.
Thank you.
thank you.
Dr. Agrawal, you can stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah, I will stop.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Nice hearing.
Dr. G. Rangnath, chairman of CATE of the Institution of Engineers, has joined. He was scheduled to speak immediately after the president. So he participated, he led our delegation to the G20 engineering group, the E20. So he has to play an important role throughout this year when India does the G20. So may I request him to kindly address before I request
No, sir.
Shiv Gangaji to bring. Yeah.
Sir, first we will listen our IIT professor, sir.
Okay.
Because
So-
their inputs is very most valuable to us.
All right. So then you will come the last. All right.
Yeah, I will
Okay.
be waiting. I am very happy.
And then you have to report to the council what
Yeah.
something good happened. All right. So Professor Shivgankarji, may I request you to kindly.
Yeah,
make
I'll
your
just share it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, President Dr. Thackeray, Secretary and Director General Major General Sayali, Dr. Chaturvedi, my fellow panelists, Professor D.P. Agrawal, and Dr. Alok Nath Dey, all other distinguished colleagues, Dr. Ranganathan, who just joined, and all other participants for this panel. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Chaturvedi for inviting me. Actually, I always feel privileged because Dr. Chaturvedi contacts me very, with a affection and authority that he should come. I should come and talk in a Institute of Engineers Fora. And many times I have come and discussed many of the issues which are related to engineering education. So I'm really delighted and privileged to be here to talk about the NEP. Dr. Agrawal has already given an overview of NEP in some sense, though he said he will be talking about the curricula. Basically, he touched upon many other things also, which are related to the overall things which are there in NEP 2020. What I'm going to do is that two things. One is I'm going to focus only on the technical education because NEP 2020 is a very broad education canvas, out of which I'm going to touch only upon engineering education. Secondly, I'm going to focus more on the implementation issues rather than the policy as a whole. what the policy says. So policy may be very admirable, but there are many implementation issues, and I think we have to focus on them when we want to take it forward. So some of the things, which I really admire about the education policy, one is, of course, the policy said about increasing gross enrollment ratio. And today we are having 28%, and they want to make it at least 50% in next 10, 15 years, which is a very admirable point. There is a National Research Foundation, which is proposed, which is going to give the research funding to all institutions, irrespective of whether they are government or they are private or semi-private or autonomous and all that. So that is something which is a very good step. Third thing which they are emphasizing, which I think never was said earlier, creating the educational leaders. Invariably, we assume that anybody who is a good researcher or a good teacher can automatically become a good leader in educational system. Many times, probably that is not true. So mentoring and creating leadership, I think it is something, a very good aspect which the NEP 2020 highlights. Then there's a teacher training program. Again, the same thing, that there are B.Ed kind of program which are there for other subjects, but when it comes to professional subjects, there is no teaching training given to anybody. So people just graduate, they do their PhDs or masters, and they get into education and they learn actually on the job. And that's what actually happened. Single regulatory authority body which they are proposing, that's a very good move, and we are already seeing merger of UGC and AICTE. It is going to take place very shortly. Academic flexibility, which is again a very desirable point, which is NEP 2020 says. Dr. Agarwal also talked about it. Enhance liberal art component for holistic development, which I think is something which is, I would say, the corrective measure which is going to be there for the technical education. Because in the last 20, 30 years, somehow we have segregated the technical education from the mainstream education in the country. I think this will bring back that segregation again into the mainstream, and there will be a holistic development of the people. And then, of course, it is emphasized that since the technology is going to be very short-lived, the lifelong learning will be basically the skill which will require. So it is not the content which you get in a particular program, but over the time, you should be able to keep updating yourself through online education, lifelong learning, and so on. So these are some of the things which I think is very, very admirable, and something which was partly missing in the earlier discussions of education. And that is something which is very nice. The major reforms or new additions and changes which the NEP 2020 has proposed, one is, of course, the National Research Foundation, which I talked about, internationalization of education. And that is, of course, we have been saying it, that we want international faculty, we want international students, but this policy actually has proposed something to facilitate to have a more international presence in our educational institution. Then standalone HIs and professional institution to evolve as a multidisciplinary institution. And that's what I was saying, that over 20, 30 years, we actually created technology universities in this country. As a result, what happened is that there was no holistic development of the people. People knew technology, but they did not understand well of the society. They did not understand the implication of that for implementation in society. So a holistic development is something which is very important, and multidisciplinary institution will actually serve that purpose. They also proposed the special education zone for the disadvantaged region. So there are many times good institutions are clustered only in metros and big cities. And if you really create this kind of educational zones, even the rural area, they will get well connected and they will be exposed to the proper technology and their engineering education. And then they have proposed the National Education Technology Forum, right, which is going to sort of decide the policies and other things for the technology education in the country. One thing which the NEP 2020 is very, very categorically highlighted is the use of technology in the education, right? And what that means is that technology should be used for education planning. It should be used in teaching, learning, and assessment. It should be used for administration and management. And it should be used in regulation, like for self-disclosure, minimum human interface, or accreditation, and all kinds of things. The technology should be used very, very active. What this will do is, it will essentially increase the access for the disadvantaged group. Because technology, all said and done, is a very great leveler. So earlier, whatever resources were available to only people who were either in big metros or in the bigger institutions, today, through the use of technology, the same thing can be provided to large number of people across the country, even in the remotest possible area and the most underprivileged you can think of. Why? Because there is a good connectivity which is there. People are having now the devices which they can connect to the networks, and they can really access a huge amount of information and knowledge through this technology. The Divyang-friendly education software also has been sort of proposed by the policy, because there are many people who are physically challenged and they require different kind of facilities to really bring them on par. And then the e-content in regional legend, and Dr. Agarwal also mentioned that for understanding is always better in the language which you understand the best. And I think AICTE here already made a move in that direction. So earlier, about 10 years back, there was a committee which was set up by the AICTE to investigate whether we can offer the technical program in the vernacular languages. And that time, because of the paucity of the material which was available, the books which were available, it was decided that probably the program cannot be offered in the local languages. However, recently, AICTE has now written the books in the local languages. And I happened to be in one of the functions which was held just 2 weeks back in Bombay, where the books in the Marathi language were distributed to the engineering colleges for the first year curriculum. And they are going to develop this in a phased manner for the second year, third year, and fourth year. So idea is, and then when they did the survey, they found that about 40% students prefer to learn engineering in their vernacular language, in local language. And that was a good feedback. And with that understanding, now the books are created. So this proposal, which was made by NEP, I think partly has already started implementation and reaching to the people. Then virtual lab, of course, they were earlier there, and to sort of expand the range, we have to create more virtual lab platforms and so on. And then we require digitally equipping schools and teachers and students. So at the moment, what is happening is that we are saying we want to make use of technology, but by and large, the teachers are not really trained to make efficient use of the technology. So they essentially again learn on the job and try to make use of technology. But I would say still the technology is highly underutilized in the curriculum program for an effective teaching learning process. Okay. So this is something which NEP has highlighted. Now, whether NEP 2020 or no NEP 2020, I think we had reached to a point where we had to introspect about the engineering education as a whole. Because the engineering education evolved over the last 50, 60 years, and it sort of got compartmentalized. Some areas really got developed there. And there was no great thought process which has gone into how the education should be moving forward. So even if NEP 2020 had not come, I think the time was right to ask the question, how are we going to tailor our engineering education for next 50 years and how we are going to address the problems which are going to be there in next 50 years. So one of the things which is pointed out by the people who are non-engineers, that in the years to come, in 50, 60 years, technology is not going to be a problem. The use of technology is going to be the greatest challenge. So technology should be addressing those issues which are of the greatest societal impact. Or on a global scenario, the technology essentially is going to work towards creating something which will make a sustainable society. And United Nations also has defined something called grand challenges. There is a shortage of water, there is the energy, and all those things, food shortage. These are the issues which technology people have to address in long run. So today, technology, a lot of technology actually goes into entertainment kind of industry, which is a more luxury. And many of the basic needs are not addressed by technology. So focus has to be redefined for usage of technology in the years to come. Then multidisciplinary and systemic thinking, that has to be now inculcated in the young graduates. Right? Innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, it is easier said than done. We still don't have the curricula which really mentor any of these things. We have to really work on this to create the proper curriculum to have the innovation and creativity. And more liberal art courses for building character and the ethical values. That is something very, very important along with development of the technology to have a sustainable and a happy society. Right? So that's what will be required. And then you require a global mindset. What that means is, since the technology is going to play a very important role in the years to come, your life is going to be governed by technology. So the policymakers should actually understand the technology and they should understand the implications of technology. Or in other words, what that means is technologists cannot remain silent spectator anymore. They should start playing an active role in the policy defining. What that means is when you are defining policy, the technologists should understand society, they should understand politics, they should understand economics, and they should understand technology. And then they can really create a policy which is an informed policy, which will be a good policy for a sustainable development. And that is something which we can come essentially from the liberal art courses and the global mindset that has to be created in the curricula. So sustainability, digital literacy, and lifelong learning. These are the three things which will require in our curricula so that the professionals can keep on updating themselves and always remain relevant for the society. At the same time, they also become important for the societal development, right? And contribute to the thing. Coming to the Indian scenario, the most crucial aspect which is missing in our education system is the quality culture. Over the years, we have focused more on the numbers. So today we produce 10 lakh engineers every year. That is the data. But this number, if you look at it, this number is more than even some of the populations of the European countries. But do we have an impact of engineering in the same proportion? And I don't think we have that impact. And the reason for that is that although we sort of got the numbers, somewhere we have compromised on the quality. And if we have to really move forward and create an impact in technology, then we have to create really quality culture should be inculcated right into our engineering program. So engineering education for NEP 2020 for engineering education, when I look at, I'll see most societal problem lies on the intersection of sub-disciplines, right? And that means we now have to restructure our departments and disciplines. We have to make the borders more porous. Don't brand somebody in 4 years that he's electrical engineer or mechanical engineer or civil engineer. Let him decide over the time what he wants to be. Would he like to shift from one to another? Could he be a combination of multiple disciplines and so on and so on? Flexibility in curriculum, I think Dr. Agarwal talks, so I will not spend much time. Ease in credit transfer, that is also proposed by the head and is a very good facilitation. Concept of major and minor, which even before the NEP came, people started implementing in many institutions. I've seen that in private as well as IITs. We have done that. Exposure to societal problems. This is something is not there in our curriculum. And that's where the industrial and the Institute of Engineers can play a role. Can they bring the societal problems to the educationists and say, look, solve these problems because these are the problems which require your attention, rather than some research, which could be the publishable research, but may not be used in your society in the neighborhood. And then we have to inculcate the design thinking and then the integration of knowledge. That would be basically the call of the day, right, as we move in future. So now with this understanding of NEP, now the major question comes is the implementation issues. NEP has proposed many things. And NEP, in my opinion, is a great wishful document. So ideally, that's what we want in any education system. So whether this is the NEP 2020 for India or even global, anybody would have written most of the things which you require, because that's what every education system wishes to have. Question is, how many of things are really implementable? And the first thing which NEP 2020 is sort of put significant thrust is the multiple entry, multiple exit options given to the engineering student. In my opinion, this is really a daunting task on 3 levels. It has the impact on academic level, it has the impact on administrative level, and it has the impact on financial level. And NEP 2020, unfortunately, has not addressed any of these issues. They have simply spelled out a wishful thinking that because of societal needs, people should be able to get into a program, can they leave, and they can do it at their own will. But this is not going to sustain unless we are having, a proper systems in place. So for example, unless you are having proper resources, unless you are having good enough finances, these kind of systems will not be able to work. The credit transfer system, which is proposed by NEP under National Credit Framework, question is, even students accumulate these credits. There is no clarity who ultimately is going to give the degree. So somebody can have a basket full of credits, and if he goes to some institution and say, give me a degree, is there a binding on a particular institution to give a degree? There is no clarity on that, right? Secondly, somebody gets the credit from a particular institution, which may be having some ranking or some grading or something. A higher ranked institution, why they should give credit, give credit to that credit which he has got from a lower ranked institution. So this kind of thing which are very left unanswered, and that is going to create a lot of problem in implementation. Student-centric flexible curriculum, yes, it is a very good proposal that the student should decide what he wants to learn, but it has a tremendous impact on the resources requirement. It requires a lot more faculty in the institution, right? It requires a variety of people with a lot of flexibility and a lot of infrastructure so that students can really choose the curriculum which they want. So the faculty-student ratio, which at the moment we are working at a very, very meager level. In engineering curriculum, the student-faculty ratio is 1:20. And many of the private institutions actually work with 25:1, 30:1, sometimes even 40:1, because there are no faculty available there. With that understanding and that scenario, implementation of this is going to be very, very difficult. Teaching in local languages, I already said, the process is already started, and we have to see the impact of that and how successful we are in that direction. Critical thinking, also I mentioned, vocational training integration, again in main curriculum, which is proposed by NEP. It is a good move. Only thing, again, we have to see how we are going to place it in the engineering curriculum, because already engineering curriculum is very loaded. If you have to create more vocational kind of courses into the program, right, we have to sacrifice somewhere, and that will be a big challenge essentially for the people who are going to implement it. Practical and hands-on experience and experiential learning. Again, you must have seen that over the years, engineering practically now it has become simulations. They have become only theoretical kind of knowledge. There is no hands-on experience. And the reason is the experimental facilities always cost the education. And people do not want to pay that kind of money, to any education. So if you wanted to create an experiential learning, you have to create more laboratory. And that's where maybe if the paying capacity of the people is not there, maybe the industry can come forward and the Institute of Engineers can facilitate to get the industrial support to create the laboratories where the students can go and get an experience or the hands-on things like that. Then comes internationalization. I will leave because that probably is not of immediate importance. Autonomy. Autonomy is something which is extremely crucial, and all said and done, still the autonomy is not given so much as it should have been given to the educational institution. There are still things which are controlled very, very tightly, and because of that, the educational institution, even if they wish to do something, they are unable to do it. Leadership mentorship program and the mentoring internship, and the third one, which is the industry academia partnership. In my opinion, these are the three areas in which the Institution of Engineers can play a very, very major role. For example, leadership mentorship program, we have so many experienced people who come from the various industries, right? And they have got really a wealth of knowledge which is there with them. Can we periodically conduct the program to develop the leaders who can then go to the industry, or they're going to go into educational institution and can transform the education system? So Institute of Engineers can play a role there. Mentoring, internship, S&T parks and deferred placement program. Again, here Institute of Engineers can play a role because they can sort of facilitate, in setting up the research facilities in the educational institution. They can also help people in creating the entrepreneurship kind of activity, right? So they can sort of support them in starting their own business, right? And institution can then help them in deferred placement, but at least Institute of Engineers can help them to see that they can start their own business if they want, if they have an idea. And industry academia partnership, where we require internship for projects, but more importantly, through this channel of Institute of Engineers, we can create a movement of the faculty to the industry and vice versa. At the moment, the industry faculty, the human exchange is not there. Sometimes the projects are given by the industry to the academia, and the projects are sort of implemented there. What we want is more academia in their vacation time. They should come to work in industry to get really first-hand exposure from the industrial problems. Similarly, the industrial experts should go to academia and teach and interact with the students and sort of inspire them and tell them about what is really the cutting edge technology with which they are working on. So these are some of the things in which Institute of Engineers can really work with the industry and academia that can really create a transformation, which will be in the line what is proposed by NEP 2020. So I will just stop here. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and we will discuss later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shiv Gangarji, for your nice presentation. I'm sure many of these things the institution will pick up. And when we really want to develop a long-term program where institution plays an important role in NEP. And as suggested by the chairman of the Delhi State Center, we do this, if they do the conference in Delhi, then we can elaborate much more. But we are sincere about reaching out through our 128 centers to what all we can do, we will just do it. Thank you very much, Shiv Gangarji, for your kind participation. Now, may I request Dr. Day to kindly make his presentation. I have not introduced the speakers because I found initially itself our Secretary Director General had made brief mention, but all of you are so eminent that everyone in the engineering field knows you very well. So forgive my not going into the detailed introduction, sir. Thank you.
Sir, here Aloknath Day is even council member also.
Yes, he's a council member also.
He is not telling, but we are proudly telling.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. So let me just go back. Sorry, just 1 second. Yes. So thank you very much. And it has been fantastic to hear two eminent speakers, Dr. D.P. Agarwal and Dr. Shiv Gankar, and our own IE, all the panelists, President, Kate Chair, Chaturvedi ji has been doing a wonderful job in the ETTF as chair. So before I start my presentations, I wanted to make 3 comments. There have been this National Policy on Education 1986 and this NEP 2020. The big change, if we would like to say, it is more about the developing country. That time we were more into how to become the best developed country, a developing country, versus now we are setting at least the tone that how do you get to a developed country. So this is all about that. And as we said, it's a pretty big document. It's wishful thinking, wishful vision that we have. So that's one part that will keep us driving. The second point I wanted to make is how much effort has gone before to reach to this. I think in MHRD had started in January 2015, a consultative process, collaborative, inclusive, consultative, participatory process. So from that angle itself, it is a pretty big, initiative. And as the government document says, then 2 lakh suggestions were gathered, 2.5 lakh gram panchayats, blocks, districts, all of them have provided a lot of inputs before this got ratified in 29 July 2020, as our president also highlighted. And third point I wanted to make is this year we got also an opportunity, another eminent engineering body, INAE, where Engineer Chaturvedi ji was also a fellow, and Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, who has been an INE fellow, but also on the foundation day, he's the script writer effectively for this NEP 2020. And there are IIT directors, ISC directors, all talked about in different satellite towns and cities. There have been many conventions. They talked about academic aspects, accreditations, admin, the R&D and industrial, and the teaching part of it. So with that, we have also started, and recently IE have conducted few seminars in webinars in the different states. And this is our effort in the national level, and we'll go big from here, I'm hoping. So with that, not repeating any of the points, I removed some of the slides. Initially, I was the first speaker. So just to say that holistic outlook and what are the underlying thoughts. Any points that have been discussed, I'll just skip or gloss over. So there are 5 pillars. Just to repeat, there is access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability. If you want to read this document, you will see all over the places these aspects, these pillars have been covered to the founding guidelines. Next point, I think a spirit of this whole effort is that the students are unique. They have an unique talent. I think many a times we focus on us as teacher, as professor, as institute, but what it tries to remind us, all these institutes exist because of the students, and we are here to serve the students. Therefore, are we doing a justice in identifying what unique talent they have, and can we provision to grow? Suppose somebody is great in maths, but not in physics, or probably maths and physics are combined, but in the liberal arts, somebody is good in the computations. Can we give a space for everybody? And there are different levels of maths that can be covered. So everybody is learning, but at multiple levels of maths that people would take. So attaining a foundational literacy and numeracy is a prime goal. On top of that, whoever is good in whichever talent side, you could actually grow them to take it. The other aspect is from content, because we focus quite a lot, have been pedagogy and lots of materials. We try to stuff our semester, with any materials that we get, and people have to go. And so this rote learning concepts to how to learn. This has been, again, a basic principle in this document. What it also tries to do, and there is a separate chapter where it says that there is no hard separation. The curricular activities and the extracurricular activities. Somebody in sports, we were talking about this club, you can have a robotics club and other, they are equally important because you are learning something there. So probably what's curricular and what's co-curricular, that could be a little bit faded. I mean, obviously there would be more importance on the curricular, but the idea is don't make too much hard separations and try to include and treat them as an extensions of the fundamental learning. Multidisciplinarity, Dr. Shevgaonkar mentioned about that. Alongside, I also would like to highlight this life skill education. Even if there is a snake bite and first aid, how to give, probably many of us would not know. If there is a fire, how to extinguish fire. So I think this life skill education, it has not been spelled out that way, but it is an important component that people need to learn on the early days. So thrust on conceptual understanding and critical thinking. So this higher order skills, what we call, is on conceptual understanding, critical thinking, analytical ability, which many of the Indian students are great, but some more sharpening would be a great idea. Then we talked about promoting our roots, because India is pretty big. We have different language, culture, diversity, heritage, anchor there, promote our multilingualism, but also, we have connecting language, English, so that's great, but how can we promote that? This document talks about that. And the other point is giving importance to ethics, constitutional values. It's not moral values. So we shouldn't take it like a, do's and don'ts type of it, but what we consider as social etiquette, giving a personal space, cleanliness, respecting others. These are things, if we can learn early on, then it will become part of us. So I think that's an important part. Continuing that, some more underlying thoughts. After that, I will go into what is for institute, what is for industry, and what is for professional network like IE. So I have 3 slides after this, but first let me cover this, whereby synergizing curriculum across all levels of education. We have seen at least I have experienced, and many people that talk, when we did 10th standard and going to 12th standard, there is a huge difference. And many a times when you change boards, something is covered, something is not covered. So what it is trying to tell is, can you look into this whole levels, all levels of education from foundational to primary to secondary, and synergize this curriculum, what gets covered. If somebody drops it or moves from one place to the other, they should be able to feel that continuum rather than this. And we didn't mention yet on this part, but the 10+2 system that we have currently, that's, I think, is being kind of changed in this document. It talks about 5+3+3+4. So at the age 3 to 6, we were not including that in the earlier, in the learning process in a systematic fashion. So now the age group 3 to 8 is that first 5, then 8 to 11 is the 3, 11 to 14 is the another 3, and then 14 to 18, by the time 12th standard people go out, in this level also this is defined. Obviously after that engineering happens, but I'm talking here even the foundational part of it. And in that foundations, you have this experiential learning. I would not repeat that, but it is all about how you can do some hands-on, how you can do experiments, how you can do simulations, labs, assignments, your clubs. This is very important. There is also an emphasis on soft skills, not at the same level, but communication skills, interpersonal relationships. So many a time there is a very great, researcher, but fundamentally maybe lacking 1 or 2 such skills, and it is hard to pick up at a later age, and therefore the person may not be able to be so successful. Therefore, these are some skills that early on it's easier to pick. Now the question is it all about students? No, faculties are at the core of this learning process, and there have been 5 parts that has been discussed in the document: quality of teachers, the recruitment process, the deployment of them, the service conditions, and the empowerment. The document actually emphasizes and says that these are not at the right level that it should be today, whether it is not explicitly, but whether compensation, service conditions, the way the promotion happens, the transparency that is there. So there is a lot about faculties. So yes, student first, but faculty's development, if it doesn't happen, then students won't get the results. So in that context, there are few things that is mentioned. The next 3 bullets are talking about that. Strengthening teacher eligibility test. There is this TET is there, but with better content and pedagogy, how to strengthen these, there have been discussions. There is this continuous professional development. Now people do it, many organization institute does it. In the corporate, for example, we have 5 days in a year, full 5 days. We are supposed to have this professional development. If you're not doing, you get your MBO score lower. So for the teachers, this has been also defined, 50 hours per year should be an earmark, for this purposes. And one more important thing, this we didn't touch so far, is this B.Ed education. All institutes would have this education department very strong. This is an expectation. And this 4 years integrated B.Ed, by some time, by 2030, I think the document talks about it, all teachers should be somehow having this B.Ed of 4 years integrated, all institutes should have. And if they have done another bachelor degree, then probably 2-year B.Ed course will be there to make it. And there would be huge amount of scholarships that have been recommended to do it, because you need to give some impetus. Those who are already teaching, what will be their motivations to go this extra mile? And this is where I think the whole focus is there. So these are some of the things for the faculty, I could say. There is going to be a regulatory framework, but everybody talks about light but tight. So we will be monitoring meaning the Higher Education Institute Authority, they will be monitoring, but it's very light touched, meaning lots of self-declarations and other things, but somebody has to do it. And if it's found non-compliant, then possibly, they'll have to fill that gap. The last point is building up outstanding research. And this NRF, today we have Department of Science and Technology, which is giving funding, ACRB. So I'm sure there would be some metamorphosis, and there is this concept of National Research Foundation will giving the funding for this research. Hopefully there would be a bigger grant associated with that so that many institutes can avail it. So these are some of these. Overall, there is a holistic outlook, and these are some of the underlying thoughts I wanted to highlight. With that, let me go and just say from what is on the institute perspective, not faculties and students, but institute has to take many steps and they may not have the funds and they. So what are the changes that is expected? First of all is the mindset change, the student centricity. In corporate world, we talk about, customers first. So here, students first, and well-being of teachers, which I highlighted, that they need to be, in the right shape to be able to take care of this. Now, again, these are simple philosophies. It's hard to implement. We all understand, but even sometimes mindset change matters. As students learn, we have to do this gamification of learning. We have in India also, there is an UN body, and I just recently discussed with them in Mysore, there would be a center that has been already announced. This gamification of learning, the methodology, the tools that could come. And we have been talking about how these many edtech companies could come forward and to make sure the learning is a fun and entertainment, at least in terms of the platform being available, and then content has to come subsequently. One of the other things, it's a hard thing to do, but we have this DigiLocker concept where we can keep our Aadhaar card and other things. This is a locker. So the same way this academic bank of credit, and there is a registry has been defined. Some people have been trying to put it. There are some challenges on the tools, but I'm sure that will get fixed over time. So if you study in one place and you go another place and the credit transfer has to happen, somebody has to look into your certificate, then they don't need to come and ask you, you give the permissions and they should be able to do. Will it happen tomorrow? Obviously not. But in 10 years, 20 years, this is a vision. This is India at 100. Can we achieve these kinds of things? So it will take a many steps, but this is a concept so that, any places that you move around, you could actually look into these things and get your certificates. Then this administration of multiple entry exit, I think both the speakers have highlighted, and this has already started. I'm adjunct faculty with IIT Jodhpur, and I think they have already started doing very well, if not certificate, but diploma and degree and master's integrated, PhD integrated, people leaving at some point and coming back in 5 years. So I can see some of these premier institutes maybe first, but it will over time could happen. And these are not connected to the system. This can be your own. You could allow them to come back and allow these courses to be defined in such a way that if you are 1 year, get a certificate and diploma and then degree like that. I see this already happening, and even in Samsung, many of our employees have started joining such program with the institutes. Dr. Shivgaonkar highlighted very well on the tech enablement, how remoteness would not be remote. You can connect through this, how this tech is a level player, leveler, this is an important part. And this NEP 2020 also talk about institutes should think of how to expand their resource without actually spending money. And this is tricky because you have a city, and city has many colleges, and possibly one has a richer library and then the other. So you could allow other students to come, each can access those libraries. So you are effectively not always going into expensive way of doing things, but think of how to expand, like IE, if it works, or industry, if it works, you are expanding your resource base to do that. So this is a very skillful and art, and whichever institute would be able to do that would be a beneficiary in a big way. There is SIAM platform, for example, online. Now, some things work, some things don't work, but I'm sure over time, if all of us start giving focus, they will start to move in the right directions. We have higher education clusters, and I would like to talk about these multi-campus courses because I have experienced two of them in IIT Kharagpur, ISI, Kolkata, and IIM. They have a course, 3 semesters. You can spend 1 semester here, 1 semester there, 1 semester there, and 4th semester in masters. You can choose whichever angle you have. If you're a management person, you do in IIM. If you are statistically data analytics course, you can do it in ISI, or if you are an engineering person, you do it here. I just last week visited Dhirubhai Ambani Institute in Gujarat, Ahmedabad, and they have started an agri analytics course whereby 1 semester there, 1 semester in Anand, and 1 semester in remote sensing satellite centers, and then you can choose your topic of project. So these are starting to happen, and it doesn't need to wait for whole NEP to do it. Institutes can take their first steps. And once these people are able to advance, then they can think of more internationalizations, either partnering MOU with this international universities here, or our own campuses in some other countries. One thing the Institute has also started doing is executive education in engineering. It was typically a management program, and I have started with the IIITB here, and many of our employees from Samsung had got degrees from there, because now it's an all-age education. It's after 15 years of their work, they got this master's degree, and we can think it of how to do more and more this executive education. One challenge where I think institutes would face is, we are into English and all books are there. There have been some examples. Dr. Shivgaonkar talked about Marathi books. I think Prime Minister, when he was visiting Tamil Nadu, he also talked about why not magical courses in Tamil. But it's a gigantic task, and what will be recognized. So we'll have to work through and find a right balance at what should be at the regional level, who needs it, and who can live with English. It's not for the sake of just pride. It's more about access. It's more about inclusion. So therefore, whoever needs these to be able to excel, they need it. Those who don't need, maybe we can live them in the urban colleges. And there have been success stories, like I'm very closely, Korea, last 11 years, 50 million people, they all have grown into that. Japanese. So it is possible in your own language to grow and become successful. So these are successful cases. But again, they are smaller countries. They have one language, whereas we are very diverse countries. So we have more challenges to handle. But that's us, right? We are intelligent enough to handle this. Last point in this is alignment towards Higher Education Commission of India. This will come much later, gradually, but there are 4 streams that have been already defined. This HECI that will be defined will have 1 regulation unit, 1 standard setting unit, 1 funding wing, and 1 accreditations. So I think even our institutes can start thinking these ways. What's on the regulation? What's on standard setting? What's on funding? Who should we approach? And so when that comes, you are almost plugged into this process. So that's my recommendation from here. So with that, let me talk a little bit about industry perspective, and then we'll conclude with the professional network like IE perspective. So with tech all pervasive and technology complexity that is growing, if you ask what is most precious in industry, I would say talent. Earlier, it used to be 10%, 20% salary difference. Now it's 1x, 2x, 3x salary difference. People in just now, the campus hiring is going on, and you can see some even freshers getting into that crores plus package. Now they must be having something very unique. Nobody is stupid to give them, right? So talent is most precious, and it will be so. And there is this non-linearity that will come. And our job is obviously as promoters of level playing field, we should like to help others to come up to that. Industries have been giving a lot of inputs in curriculum. There's research positions, research, your content for research kind of streams. You have mentorship process. You have hackathons that people are giving inputs. And I know that, even recently, professor of practice, for example, has been defined. You don't need even PhD, but you bring that industry value to the institute and play a role. And it has started playing good roles. I'm associated as adjunct with IISc and IIT Jodhpur. So we bring some closeness through this process to this whole institute industry interaction. Industry needs more industry-ready talent. So more courses, curriculums, more soft skills, all of these are taught. They are much more ready. We talk about unemployability and things like that, but this is to bridge that gap. And with a holistic outlook, so that industry doesn't need to do too much, just orient them for their particular business, and they're ready to go in terms of the business. What one buzzword you can call, but this is becoming very dominant, is it's not knowledge. Many people knows many things, but what we do with them is the more important thing. And so the term is skills, hands-on. It can be hands-on, it can be also theoretical skills. I don't mean to say it's only practical, but any skills. What is the skill? If people in the interviews would be asked, what skills do you have? The assessment is not about which premier institute you have come from and what doll do you know, but what can you build? What are you oriented towards? So the skills is the real important word moving forward. NEP also talk about all year internships, first year end, what you can do, second year, third year. Some you go to industries. Some people, if you are research minded, you can stay back, work with the research focus. So it provisions, and more internships means more connect with the industry or the R&D setup in some way. And as I told earlier, the employees' continuous skill upgrade with executive education would be necessary. So it's an opportunity for academic institute to offer, but it's also an opportunity for me not to finish my master's and PhD immediately. I do bachelor, I join a job, and after 10 years, I decided I learned enough and now I need to excel in this. And therefore I go and do my master's, part online, part physical, and I get my degree. So recognition of various forms, this is a challenge for industry. As it's a challenge for academia, but also more challenge for industry. How to know which degree is more valuable? We have to do a recalibration in the hiring process, because once there is now we knew that, okay, he's from IIT or an NIT or this college or this particular subject. So we understand that it's easy to comprehend. But once people get from multiple directions, how do you calibrate? This would be a challenge in the industry to give right value and be fair to the people, the right way of hiring. And the last part on research, again, projects, collaborative research, co-creations. If we can take up, Dr. Shivgaonkar was mentioning about some of these grand challenges, water scarcity, food security. So if you can grow more, then possibly we can even address this more holistically. So with that, I think you got the academia and the industry perspective. Now I'll conclude with this. Obviously, we have to work more, but some of the recommendations, some possibilities just to put. And being a council member, it's my part responsibility to also see that we take it through, work with CARTE, CCC, and many others to give some shapes and, involve in the process. So that way AMIE, I mean, if we go back, it has served IEI's growth. And we have been benefiting, and we have also served through this and AMIET and this. Possibly it has served its time and purpose. Obviously, it can continue in some sense, but I think it's time, this NEP 2020 framework, if we take and see how we can modify those modules and contents and what can you add, it can add a new feel to our journey. So that's one. Second, I wanted to say the vocational training, it's not just the, the curricular and the extracurricular, but the vocational training is being valued significantly. In fact, it's being said at some places that treat them more equally, because plumbing or constructions or gardening, if we don't get those people, just think of what will happen to our life, right? So these skills are very, very important. So please value, please respect for those work and dignity of labor. So jack up vocational training. And I think we have ESCI and we have many programs in IEI. I'm sure we can look into this and jack up this, at least this part of the NEP 2020, we can play a pretty big role. And not to say that others part, also we can take it up, but this is almost, our cup of tea. There is the soft skills training and workshops, communications, negotiations, interpersonal skills. If we can spread our wings, nothing like it. There is room for faculty development programs and Atal labs, and there are programs associated, so we can look into those and institute accreditations. We can also think of IE as an internship programs in the institute, along with our council members, maybe, some associated with each council member and do it, but overall IE plus that fellow or that council member is able to give an internship. So it's a possibility. We have an NLPC for which also I'm part of it, but national language promotions, at least some of our webinars in the remote, not the, again, very cutting edge ones, but the basic ones where we want to reach to rurals, maybe we can start doing some local language webinars. At least partly, part English, part other language. And we have already initiated a process of creating our own council members database, who speaks which language, and then possibly we can invite and do this. If we want to go social wing, rural education support, if the bandwidth permits and we have some funds, that definitely would be helpful for our country. National Research Foundation, and there are other funding agencies that will come, maybe our forums, like we are associated in Karnataka, at least NDRF, Design and Research Forum, some projects, some grants, we should see how we can secure it, and possibly this will help us to also secure our organizations, at the same time serve people through those fundings, because NRF is just the funding agency, somebody has to carry forward. So for example, design thinking as a process, possibly we can take it up. And the last point I wanted to highlight is, to do this, we have a CARTE structure and CCC. This is much more internal. We can discuss more, but we are involved with the different technologies, engineering, 15 branches, and CCC is looking into all the geographies. But the NEP is somewhere cutting across, and there is many student branches. So I believe we can connect through this and make a new way of working. So some champions, some would be able to drive this without jeopardizing the structures, but more like a detailed program, how we can manifest. So these are more specific recommendations for IEI. I didn't want to generalize for any other professional network, but being a part of IEI, I would love to see some of these happening, and hopefully we would play a strong role in NEP 2020. So with that, I conclude here and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Day, for your wonderful presentation. On behalf of the Institution of Engineers, actually, we are really grateful to all the three eminent speakers to cover everything on on NEP, the curriculum, the accreditation, industry, academia interaction, and the skills development. Overall, where the Institution of Engineers, public body should play an important role and do its own, serve the nation, because we are in a position to do it in a much better way. There is no other institution which has such facilities. Dr. Day mentioned that how INA had divided the whole NEP into 5 parts, and the 5 parts were discussed in detail and converged into it. Dr. Kasturi Rangan chairing it on our annual day. Obviously, Dr. Shivgaonkar was also involved in writing the NEP. So we spent a lot of time on giving those inputs, and also they had given those inputs, prepared the background paper for us. Now, if any of our experts, Dr. Shivgaonkar or Dr. Day, have any more to add, then please do it. Otherwise, after you have made your comments, I'll request Dr. Rangnath, the chairman of CATE, to formally sum up, and ultimately our General Sayali would express the word of thanks. Yeah.
I just wanted to share that, we prepared a kind of document in July through this ETTF, a concept note for IEI deliberations. And I'm happy to have this, and we can circulate to others subsequently.
Yeah, we'll do it. And as an outcome of this, since now the Delhi states, we were earlier searching a center to organize a meeting. There were 3 centers were earlier offered, but they did not finally come up with the physical meeting. The chairman of Delhi State Center has now agreed, since he is now I told you, the VC of the Rajasthan Technical University. So maybe at the earliest we can also discuss this and come out with a further document on what IEI can do. And he asked me to assure that all funding, all technical things, he would take care of it. And see, there are 4 important ministers coming from Rajasthan. So because of his university contact, he could bring in more of a political meat also into this our discussion. So Shivgaonkar ji, you have something to say?
No, I don't have anything new to add. No, nothing.
Oh, okay, Dr.
Sir,
Rangnath.
one thing that there are about some questions in the chat group. So maybe there is an expectation to respond back either today or later. So
I was thinking, because I find the number is too large, we can if there's something that you would like to, you think you can.
There is one last question. One last
question
which I'm seeing, Dr. Chaturvedi.
Please go ahead.
Can you elaborate on the major and minor subjects in NEP? So actually, major and minor is not really concept of NEP. It was already existing in most of the institutions. The idea is that you are having a particular degree program, a particular discipline like electrical or mechanical, but then you can take 20 more extra credits in some other discipline and can get a minor degree along with your major degree. That is the concept of the minor. So you can have a electrical engineering, minor computer science, minor management, or vice versa. Of course, invariably people have a trend towards management and computer science, but it need not be always like that. So there is a facilitation which is done, in the form of minor, so that people can learn something what they like rather than what program they got into. That is it.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to take one aspect, if I could take, because
please go ahead.
Many people are asking, when does it start and which age, and NEP 2020, what is the kick-starting? So this is done in 2020, but this is an ongoing process. I think it's an India at 100. We want to see many things, but there are some things set for 2030. For example, that B.Ed program I said, there is 2030. Some things are written like 35 or 40. So some will be quicker because it is within the institutes, but some will take longer because it is connecting the systems, and some may never happen, but even if it's 75, 80% has been happening, that's great. And the age is 3 onwards, the NEP 2020 has started defining. Edge 3 rather than standard first. I think somebody is asking. So for now, I think that should be fine and we can respond formally later.
Right. So what I'll request is our technical department to put together all the questions, circulate to our experts, and whatever we get, we'll circulate to our audience. Maybe that will be, because it'll take a little longer, and whatever we can do. Now, I'll request Dr. Rangnath, who is the chairman of CATE, to sum up and say, so that when he does the summing up, it is the commitment of Chairman CATE that he has understood the nuances of all the issues, and he has to support and project in the council that all these things should go. So you should carry all good things from here, and ultimately, SDG will have to bear the burden of seeing that things are implemented. So we would ask him to thank at the end. So when he thanks, then he takes the responsibility to see it's implemented. So I'll pass over first to Dr. Rangnath, and then it goes to General Sayali Saab.
Thank you, sir.
Rangnath.
So, respected President of II, Thakreji, and good colleague of me, being a council member of II and executive from Samsung, and good friend of me in person, Dr. Alok Nagde, the two eminent speakers who has poured their knowledge to us, share their important information to us, DP Agarwal ji and Professor Shavangakar ji from IIT Mumbai. The person who has taken the initiation for this wonderful webinar, and my elder brother, Pradeep Chaturvedi ji, who is the chairman of ETTF, and my SDG from II, and other staff members from technical department of II. Good evening to all of you. First, let me thank my president, who is encouraged the chairman of ETTF to arrange this webinar. Today, it is not a webinar, we can call it as a workshop.
Yes.
By bringing three top eminent speakers, out of which one is my good colleague of me in council. All the three has given a lot of information. And IA is very happy to look forward to move all these things. Yes, our UPC chairman has given the policy of NEP 2020 and advantage of NEP 2020. No doubt in that, it is true also. And there he has told IAS to come forward even to adopt some of the engineering colleges for implementation of this NEP 2020. Yes, there are a good number of institutions are members of this IA forum. Certainly, we are having our own network. We can play a role in joining them in implementation of this NEP 2020, provided there are some hurdles are there which is going to be cleared. And even our IT professor Shagakar was openly telling, so leadership and mentorship is most important in educational institutions. It is 100% true, sir. I am agreeing with you as an academician. You have given a light on that. I am very, very happy. And again, they were telling AICTE has given importance for vernacular languages to bring in engineering education, where different states has already came forward. For information, even for 4 years back, in 2018 itself, 2017-18 batch itself, Tamil Nadu government has taken initiation in implementing engineering education in Tamil medium, Tamil languages, by bringing books in especially mechanical engineering and civil engineering and electrical engineering, 3 domains, which to be called as basic engineering. But as Alok Nath say, I agree with him. Regional language implementation in Korea, Japan, Germany or China is totally different, because entire country is single formula, single language. Whereas being we are democratic in nation, in the world is the biggest democratic country, and we are having already about 14 languages, official languages in the currency, and more than 30 languages in India, and more than 25 languages officially declared in different places. And the education in engineering is going to be implemented in regional languages. The same graduate, if you want to go out of state, they will have their own practical difficulties. They will have their own setback. They will have their own suffocation. So because of that, if you take in Tamil Nadu, though we implemented this regional language education, engineering education 4 years back, Today, no takers. I'm sorry to say this, no takers. Because the graduate, those who came out, the government of Tamil Nadu not in a position to give employment opportunity. Same graduate, they are unable to fly in a different color for different places in the country. Either to serve a private company or a government company or any company. So they're having their own difficulties of bringing employment opportunity for them individually. So due to that, today what has happened is seats are available, students are available, but they're not opting. So this practical difficulty is there. What our professor, IIT professor clearly said. Then again, our IIT professor clearly remarked, yes, wonderful policy of 2020, but again, implementation issues are there which is not addressed properly or effectively. Unless otherwise implementation issues are going to be implemented, it is very difficult to execute. Now, for example, MHRD brought this wonderful program of NEP 2020, but till throughout India, they're not taken care. Only few states with the like-minded states of Union Government of India, they're implemented. Because of political scenario, political gimmick, we cannot talk as a politics in this platform being an academician. Otherwise, because there again political gimmicks, still some states are opposing, some states are not implementing. So there are so many things are happening. So because of this, again, all the universities are coming under state control, except some of the central universities. Remaining all the universities in every state, they're coming under state control. So without consent of the state governments, they cannot take forward of NEP 2020 openly. They will have setback. This causes practical difficulties. And once the university is not taking care, are coming forward, education institutions, they cannot take it for implementations. There will be another bottleneck. So as our Shagankar IIT professor said, it is true, I am agreeing with him. Yes, NEP policy is good. But again, implementation issues are, there are some hurdles, so bottlenecks, which they are supposed to bring a proper policies to implement every state. Then again, credit transfer system. Yes, really true. The student who is studying for 1 year, taking some credits, shift to another institution, take some more credits, shift to another institution, bag of credits in this bag. But ultimately, who is going to award the degree for the graduate? Who is awarded the degree? Again, that universities, well, there are their own rules and regulations. So again, there is a policies here. There is some hidden agenda is there, or some bottlenecks are there, which should be cleared by the policy holders. So we are very, very happy. But today, all the three speakers has given beautifully, and my friend Aloknath Dey has given holistic look and institutional perspective on industry, institutional perspective on institutions. He has thrown a light on this also. For all these things, I am very, very happy to take forward. With the president consent, we'll take it forward. We'll go for CAT-A. We'll discuss in elaborately. They'll take to the council. We're going to get approval in the council because all council members are like-minded peoples to take this type of things in a good way. Once if NEP is going to come, we're very happy individually. But as a matter of policies, there are difficulties which is going to be implemented. But IAI will commit to you. Will endorse on behalf of the president. I will endorse. We are very happy to take this forward, to have any type of implementations with MOU with the industry, MOU with the education institutions, to play a key role, IAI, in between these two for implementation, sir. With this, by thanking all the three eminent speakers, our Agrawal Saab, and Shagankar, and good friend of me, Alok Dey, my direction to SDG and technical department, please all the questionnaires, whatever the audiences raised, please forward to our experts. By bringing an answer from the experts, let us consult the work and give it to everyone. With this, let me thank my president. Let me thank my elder brother Pradeep Chaturvedi ji, who has taken a lot of initiations in this, arranging this webinar. And personally, let me thank all the three eminent speakers, out of which my good friend Aloknath Dey includes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We should record our appreciation to the president for taking up this important issue and realizing that IAI can play an important role. because we have not been, I don't remember many cases where the president would have thought that an issue of national importance, where II should find a way and do it. And this we are going to do it. So, Dr. Rangnath, when you go to CATE, you must say that the committee and ETTF and everyone had great appreciation for the initiative of the president and
Yes,
the
sir.
direction. And Dr. Day has agreed that once we send him the main points from this, the technical department sends him in a day, he'll clear and send us the report which can go to CATE. So I'm sure the technical department will pass it on to Dr. Day, and then we can send you the report in time so you present it to the council. And we must thank the president for his initiative once again. So, President sir, if you have anything to say, otherwise we ask SDG.
Thanks a lot,
to-
President, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you,
President
sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
SDG sir, please proceed.
SDG sir, you go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. I feel really privileged and proud to deliver the formal vote of thanks and the end of a very interesting and educative session. And we were enlightened by the distinguished speakers who, despite their hectic schedules, agreed to participate in the webinar. And my sincere thanks to Dr. DP Agarwal, Dr. R.K. Shivgaonkar, and Dr. Loknath Dey. Their insightful deliberations on the topic covering several dimensions of the National Education Policy to 2020 has enriched and enlightened us. And I thank you once again, sir, for your valuable inputs, especially those which are concerning II. There are a lot of good suggestions which are come up. We will take them on and see which of these can be implemented. My also hearty thanks to Dr. H.O. Thakre, President IEI, for giving his consent for organizing this webinar on IEI platform. I would also like to thank Dr. G. Ranganath, Chairman CATE, for his presence during the webinar, enlightening us with his speech. And he has always been there, force behind such initiatives. Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi, Chairman ETTF and moderator of today's event, deserves special thanks for initiating the process
Thank you.
and constantly guiding us to ensure the success of the event, as well as taking on the responsibility for conducting this webinar as moderator, getting all the panelists together and stitching everything together. I must also thank the participants without whom this webinar would not have been successful. We will be shortly reaching up to them and answering all their queries. Last but not the least, I want to thank my team at IIA Headquarters for their untiring efforts towards making this webinar a success. Thank you, everybody. Jai Hind.
And thanks to SDG. Thanks to SDG.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskar. Thank
Namaskar.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all, sir.
So may we close the webinar, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
President, sir. Thank you.